Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
The effects can be quite severe.
Scorching temperatures and smoky skies. How the heat and smoke combined can be brutal for your health. Also, staggering COVID numbers. BC records the most cases since May. And
it's going to be messy. I think there's going to be a lot of terminations.
Mandatory COVID vaccines for federal employees. Why other businesses could follow suit.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
The thick smoke from wildfires that's choked BC's interior for weeks has now made its way to the Lower Mainland, blanketing the skies, ash even falling in parts of the Fraser Valley. Good evening and thanks for joining us. You can see here a live shot of that smoke right now. Now, the haze coupled with these scorching temperatures we're experiencing means some pretty dangerous conditions tonight, especially for those who are most vulnerable. Karen Pauls is looking at what people are facing as they try to get through the next few days.
People living in one of BC's wildfire hotspots are at the local hockey arena for a bit of exercise and some relief.
Very, very smoky, very difficult breathing if you have some issues, as I do, and also getting to be very, very hot.
The air in here is quite good and cool.
The wildfire smoke that has choked BC's interior has now moved to the coast. Some areas have more than 20 times the healthy limit of fine particle pollution. It comes just in time for the province's third heat wave of the summer.
But the heat is pretty bad, yeah. It's like, it feels really like suffocating.
With the air quality, obviously we have to watch our time outside, right?
You can usually see the mountains in the distance. The air smells a bit like a bonfire, stinging the eyes and throat. It's a bit of a catch-22. If you stay inside to avoid the poor air quality, you're at risk of the extreme heat.
There's a high risk of mortality amongst people if they don't take precautions.
This health official says in the midst of a heat emergency, the temperature and air quality are bigger health risks than COVID-19.
People should not be worried about going to cooling centers, regardless of how many people are there. You don't have to worry about physically distancing. Do not wear a mask if you're having trouble breathing. Do not be afraid to go and check on your neighbor.
Nearly 600 British Columbians died of heat-related causes during June's extended heat wave. Officials say they're better prepared this time.
A lot of it really is getting messaging out to individuals, especially individuals that are living alone, that having somebody check up on them.
According to the World Air Quality Index, Vancouver's air pollution is the second worst in the world today. Less than a year ago, in September, the city topped that list, and wildfire season is still far from over. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Vancouver.
There are around 270 active wildfires burning across this province. The biggest priority is the White Rock Lake fire. Smoke and ash from the blaze is funneling south to Kelowna. That's where the CBC's Katie Nicholson is. Katie, I see you're wearing an N95, so conditions must be really bad. And even just looking at that smoke behind you, what's it like?
I mean, I wouldn't be wearing this if I didn't have to. I woke up and this is what Kelowna looked like. I could be anywhere. You wouldn't know. That's Okanagan Lake behind me. It's just smoke to you on camera. That's pretty much what it's like taking a drive through this region. You know, and in addition to just waking up with all of that weird, fine particulate ash all over your car and your windows, you're also now breathing in this thick smoke that is just sitting here in the region from Kelowna all the way up to Vernon. In fact, when we were driving up this morning to Vernon, it was surreal. You really couldn't even tell what was around you. You know, normally it's a beautiful kind of mountain windy drive with a lake on one side. You saw none of that. You saw, if you were lucky, the shadow of the mountain that you were about to turn around with some vague outlines of trees. It is a very thick, dense smoke. It's almost reminiscent of a thick Newfoundland fog. And you know, once we got to Vernon, the effects of the smoke, it's like the streets were almost completely empty. We went inside the arena where people were doing laps, just trying to get some exercise in cooler temperatures, but also where they didn't have to breathe in this smoke that is just hanging here and hampering visibility.
Now, Katie, I imagine the smoke is having an effect on the ability for firefighters to actually fight the White Rock Lake fire. What have you heard?
Well, we took a drive up to the east side of the lake that looks right across to West Side Road, where all those properties have been evacuated, where we were told yesterday, you know, that fire was backing up into the backyards of some of the properties there. All day yesterday, there were choppers dumping water. It was just a really busy highway of choppers, lake fire, lake fire. Today, we could see none of that because of this dense smoke. And we asked the province, has this smoke hampered that aerial assault on the fire? And they confirm, yes, indeed, you know, because of Transport Canada rules around visibility and what is a safe flying condition, those choppers, a lot of the aerial assault on this fire unable to happen today. So that is certainly going to set them back.
Katie Nicholson reporting from Kelowna for us tonight. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
Things are so bad in some parts of the interior that provincial officials are asking people who don't live there to stay away until further notice. High winds are expected to make things even worse this weekend. Armstrong, Spillimcheen, Enderby, the Okanagan Indian Band, and parts of the Regional District of North Okanagan are all included in that warning. A complete map of the affected area can be found at emergencyinfobc.ca. We need to bring in meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe now. And Joe, one of the worst air quality days for many people across southern BC. So will this smoke stick around through the weekend? I think that's on the minds of everyone.
You're right, Anita, both for the interior and here on the south coast. And we do have one more day under this high pressure ridge, although it looked like air quality may improve slightly for the south coast tomorrow, but be prepared for another smoky day to start your weekend. I want to take you, though, to pictures from across Metro Vancouver from today. As we heard earlier, one of the worst air quality days for Metro Vancouver since our record air quality due to wildfires back in September 2020. And this is all connected, of course. The outflow winds carrying that smoke from the interior towards the coast. The same winds also bringing us our record-setting temperatures. For a third day in a row, we broke daily temperature records across the south coast with temperatures into the mid to high 30s. Here's a look at the records for today, including Squamish, West Van, Vancouver Harbour, and Whistler. And then, of course, seeing another day of record-breaking temperatures in through the interior, Lytton at 37 degrees. We are seeing a bit of a reduction in temperatures today because of that dense smoke, not allowing solar radiation to get in. Tomorrow, there is a slight shift in winds, so we might not be quite as smoky here on the south coast. In fact, at one point, compared to other major cities around the world, we were actually #1 for worst air quality here in Vancouver. Anita, the smoke is still going to be very much a big concern for the interior tomorrow. It's Sunday that we'll be watching for big changes as that cold front moves through. But as we keep saying, it's a double-edged sword. We've got the gusty winds, the lightning strikes, as you mentioned, but it's the only thing that is going to sweep out the smoke for both the south coast and the interior. So watching things very closely over the next 48 hours. I'll time it out for us. It's a different story on the south coast as it is to the interior. We will get some rain here in Vancouver, but a bit of a question mark for the fire zones. All those details coming up.
It's really hard to win right now, isn't it, Joe? Thanks.
It is between a rock and a hard place. You're right.
Now, as Joe mentioned, the situation could get worse over the next few days, which could also mean more evacuations from wildfires. But as it is, there are few accommodations left that are anywhere near the communities under threat. Yesterday, residents of Logan Lake were told to go 2 hours away because everything else was full. As Susanna De Silva joins us live right now from Chilliwack, where evacuees were sent. Susie, what are you hearing from those forced out?
Yeah, well, of course, it's been a very challenging time over the last 24 hours for them. Now, this emergency center here has actually been set up for weeks, accepting wave after wave of evacuees from different fires. And the evacuees I spoke to here today say they are very grateful for the services they are receiving here, even if it is far from home.
There you go. Over. There you go. Good boy.
It has been a tough 24 hours for Melanie Whitaker and her whole family.
Suddenly, it just went like a dark orange and it started raining ash.
She runs a pet supply store in town and quickly headed home to pack her kids, including her son, who has special needs.
It's been really hectic and really stressful, just losing sleep, hoping that in my situation it's not just my home that I could lose, it's my actual business and income. And I also have 2 employees that are now out of work right now.
They have family on the North Shore, so they planned on heading to the Lower Mainland. But this Chilliwack Centre is where all of the evacuees of the community 2 hours away have been sent, as there was no accommodation in Ashcroft or Merritt, with a warning from the district that evacuees may have to sleep in their cars.
Stay with family and friends, because we don't want people to be staying in vehicles.
But some residents have decided to stay, despite warnings from officials not to do that.
I turned sprinklers on all my roofs yesterday. I've been watering my place right down. I'll watch, visually watch the situation, and when I can see flames or embers, then I'll be out of here.
We've got all the necessary things packed.
Marlene Halden says she too would have come to the Lower Mainland to stay with her son and grandchildren.
It was a little scary, and we've had this for a few days now, where any day now it's going to happen, and yesterday it did.
For now, residents have been given vouchers for a week's worth of hotel stays, and they hope they won't need more.
We'll go swimming and we'll go biking and get them out for some hiking, and I mean we have our dogs, so he has to get out for walks anyways, and then our cats have been happy in the hotel for last night, and so we just got to make the best of what we can.
Scary situation for sure, Susie. So what is the latest on that fire threatening that community?
Well, an update from the BC Wildfire Service about an hour or so ago says that the fire is still about 7 kilometers from the community of Logan Lake, 8.5 kilometers from the community of Ashcroft, that they have 17 personnel in the community of Logan Lake right now trying to protect the structures in there. Now, this is a community that does have a widespread system of industrial sprinklers that they have on a large number of the buildings in that community, hoping to cool down the air around those properties, to bring the water, to prevent any embers from igniting any of those properties. So they are continuing to do that work right now. And again, the province is telling anyone that does need accommodation to come down here, that there is still some accommodation in this area. Anita?
Yeah, this isn't the first time the residents there have experienced this. Susanna De Silva live in Chilliwack for us tonight. Thanks, Susie. And with a third heat wave of the summer upon us, cities across the Lower Mainland are taking extra steps to keep people cool. The City of New Westminster has opened 4 cooling centres. The Queensborough Community Centre, the Anvil Centre and New Westminster Public Library are all open from 12 to 9. But the Century House is open 24 hours a day. That's part of their updated response after devastating effects of June's heat dome.
You can open up cooling centres during the day, but really where the risk is that during the evening and overnight, because with the temperatures not getting down below 16 or not getting down below 20 degrees Celsius, that's where people are at risk because their bodies can't cool down. So that's why the City of New Westminster has activated our cooling centre 24/7.
In previous heat waves, just making it down to the cooling centres was a challenge for many people. Now, New Westminster is offering free cab rides to and from centres through Royal City Taxi. Well, it's a big step in Canada's response to COVID-19. Ottawa will be requiring federal employees to be fully vaccinated against the virus. That also means workers in federally regulated industries like banks, railways, and airlines. The hope is the mandate will be implemented by the end of October, if not sooner.
The Government of Canada has been focused on vaccination and obviously believes, as do so many people that work with us, that this is the best way to end the pandemic and to allow for the economy to safely remain open.
Also, anyone traveling by plane, on interprovincial trains and cruise ships will have to be vaccinated as well. The government isn't offering a timeline for that, but does say there will be protocols in place for people who can't be immunized. Here in BC, requiring vaccines is so far being left up to individual employers. But as the CBC's Michelle Gassoub reports, without a mandate from the province, small businesses could face major legal hurdles.
If you want to work for the Victoria Harbour Cats next season, you'll need 2 doses of a COVID-19 vaccine.
We've had 2 summers off now of not playing baseball.
So we want to do whatever we can to make sure that we're all happy and healthy and safe and able to play in 2022.
The college baseball team isn't taking risks. The policy applies to staff, coaches, players, and host families.
If we're all sick and not able to do our jobs, we can't put on a Harbour Cats baseball game. If we have players who are sick, we can't put on a Harbour Cats baseball game. So from that perspective, that's the important thing for us. We're happy to be leading that curve.
Dr. Bonnie Henry says that's fair game, and individual workplaces don't need a provincial order to introduce a vaccine mandate.
These are business decisions that they need to make in conjunction with their own labor lawyer advisors, but I do think it is a perfectly valid thing.
But those labor lawyers say without a provincial mandate, vaccine mandates in the workplace are complicated.
It's going to be messy. I think there's going to be a lot of terminations.
The questions: will individual businesses need to prove vaccines are necessary to keep them safe? And is firing a person for being unvaccinated considered reasonable cause?
In terms of firing, if they do fire somebody because of refusal to vaccinate, they could be facing, a wrongful dismissal lawsuit. So there could be fairly significant financial implications of that. If the employer, asks and determines the person's not vaccinated, they can certainly make the call and not hire that person.
Yet another hoop to jump through for businesses trying to keep employees safe and in the game. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
And it's a grim day in BC's fight against COVID-19. 717 new cases of the virus today. That's the highest daily total since the beginning of May. More than 50% of those new cases are in interior health. Hospitalizations are up slightly to 82 people, with 39 of them in intensive care. Thankfully, no one has died of the virus in the last 24 hours. A skate park near the Britannia Community Centre, built by community members from scratch, could soon go away. It's grown over the years, and skaters have built up ramps and rails in an unused tennis court. But as Angela Starrett tells us, to keep it, users may need to prove its popularity.
Its popularity has soared over the last few years, so much so it's even endorsed by the pros.
This is my favorite park in Vancouver.
Come 4 o'clock, skaters roll in to the northwest side of the Britannia Community Centre, practicing for hours.
Young kids pass through all the time, and it's a really great community.
About 4 years ago, skateboarders built up the ramps and the rails from scratch from unused tennis courts.
Britannia Courts is so important because it's a park that is a DIY, meaning we're doing it ourselves. We're making the ramps. It's all a community project, and it's a space that we made safe for everyone to come and enjoy.
But the park's survival now stands in the balance. The city's approval of Britannia's renewal of the centre didn't originally bank on a skate park. Instead, the focus was on the pool and the rink.
There are plans to build an ice rink to replace the ice rink in this location. So right now, the 2018 master plan does not include a skate park.
But she's hoping that could change given the traction of the sport.
An activity that can start young and go into, that can age with you. So I think that's super important. And it's also an activity that creates community.
And with a high school nearby, youth in the area, and its prominence in the Olympics, skateboarding is here to stay.
Having skate parks accessible like this is definitely going to help have kids going by that have never skated, and they get to see people like Fabiana Delfino here skateboarding.
Because of nightlights here, a rarity in skate parks, people can hone their skills here even longer. And Cynthia says because of the skaters' respect for the neighbors and the park, its staying power is all the more likely.
I think that it's something that we would like to see integrated into the renewal.
Britannia will be hosting public engagement events on September 16th, and one specifically with the skate community. Angela Starrett, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, the federal government is announcing new funding to support long-term care homes in BC. Facilities will see $134 million in funding. That will go toward improvements like more single bedrooms and improved ventilation. Improving air quality is a priority to address comfort and medical distress during extreme heat.
Today's funding reflects our government's commitment to make sure everyone living in long care facilities such as the one that we're at today receives safe, quality care and is treated with dignity.
The federal government also planning to implement national standards in long-term care homes. Well, lawyers for Meng Wanzhou say the extradition case against the Huawei executive is fatally flawed. The defense began making its case at BC Supreme Court today. Meng is accused of lying to an HSBC executive about Huawei's control of a subsidiary that was violating U.S. sanctions against Iran. The argument is that the bank risked losses and prosecution by continuing to handle Huawei's finances based on that lie. But the defense says there is no evidence she was dishonest or that HSBC actually suffered loss. The hearing continues Monday and is expected to wrap up by the end of the next week. A decision isn't expected for some time after that. And a reminder from Vancouver Police tonight as we head into another warm, sunny weekend. Open alcohol in public places is not allowed. The VPD says it has seen a substantial increase in open consumption of booze in the downtown core, despite the city designated drinking spaces. Between June 1st and August 7th, there were 940 liquor pour-outs. That's compared with 133 last year and 511 in 2019. Police say most of the incidents are concentrated in the Granville Entertainment District.
The Granville Mall is a place that people have been congregating and drinking. This, in turn, is leading to more and more disturbances, assaults, and other crimes that are happening fueled by liquor.
Police also say there have been 19 violent incidents on downtown beaches between January 1st and June 23rd. Well, thank you so much for watching tonight. We always like to remind you, you can watch our newscast live on CBC Gem if you're not already doing that. You can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. The Taliban has swept across Afghanistan's south, taking several more cities. What this means for the people of the country, as half the provincial capitals have fallen to insurgents. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. When you think of camping, you might imagine a crackling fire, crawling into a cozy tent, and sleeping under the stars. But what if you've never been camping? Some people on PEI got that experience for the first time recently. Parks Canada has a program called Learn to Camp. The CBC's Jane Robertson tagged along to see how it all works.
Camping in PEI National Park can provide some unique opportunities. Flying kites on the beach, going for a swim. These visitors are taking it all in thanks to a Parks Canada program called Learn to Camp.
This is the first time of camping, so I'm really excited about that.
Parks Canada has partnered with the PEI Association for Newcomers to Canada since 2011.
We invite newcomers that are interested to come out and camp for the first time. Maybe not the first time, but maybe the first time in Canada.
This year, Parks Canada is hosting small groups of 5 campsites each Friday through the summer. Staff teach the new campers basic skills like how to use a camp stove, set up a tent, and safely start a fire. They also provide the supplies to help reduce barriers for the first-timers.
And so that includes a tent, bedrolls to make it very comfortable underneath your body. We provide pots and pans, dishes, a lantern, and seats to sit around the campfire as well.
Once their camps are set up, the participants are able to explore, to make memories as the sun sets over the Gulf of St. Lawrence.
And we also went to the beach. We just looked, because my dad wanted to see what the beach looked like in the evening.
Then retiring to their sites for the warm glow of a campfire before heading to bed. The next morning, the water sparkles and shines as the sun rises and the campers awake.
Here in the tent, we are very warm and
cozy.
In-person Learn to Camp programs are taking place this year in Halifax, Vancouver, and PEI. Other Parks Canada sites put on virtual outreach and demonstrations. On PEI, they're even opening up some limited Learn to Camp spots to the general public as well, leaving the first-time campers ready for their next outdoor adventure.
A beautiful night.
Would you do it again?
Yes, sure. Yes.
Jane Robertson, CBC News, Cavendish Campground in PEI National Park.
Tonight, Taliban forces have the Afghan government backed into a corner. Its sphere of influence seems to shrink by the hour. Carolyn Dunn has the latest developments in this ongoing siege, and she looks ahead to what's in store as those insurgents close in on total control.
Fighters and supporters of the insurgency celebrate the fall of Kandahar. Propaganda the Taliban is happy to share on social media. They are not so keen to show the looming humanitarian crisis. More than 240,000 displaced, food and medicine are scarce.
We're also seeing the number of civilian casualties really spiraling alarmingly, and an increasing proportion of women and children are among those that are targeted.
Recently won rights for women and girls are evaporating.
My heart is actually bleeding. It turns into pieces when I see the same country that we have actually put our blood and treasure, our energy is being shattered.
Now Taliban insurgents are closer to taking their fight to the capital.
Urban warfare in Kabul would be catastrophic. One can only imagine with horror what it would look like in Kabul, a city whose population, in a sense, is increasing on a regular basis because of the fighting going on outside of the city.
Meantime, peace talks that were supposed to backstop the withdrawal of U.S. and other foreign troops appear deadlocked.
That was delusional, in fact.
The security expert says the Taliban is a proxy for al-Qaeda, and it is looking at Afghanistan to launch a comeback as a global security threat.
We've seen throughout history that what happens there doesn't stay there, and we're already seeing the ramifications of this play out globally.
With so much at stake, this from the UN Secretary General.
This is the moment to halt the offensive. This is the moment to start serious negotiation. This is the moment to avoid a prolonged civil war or the isolation of Afghanistan.
That's Carolyn Dunn reporting for us tonight. Now, Canada is facing increased pressure to help Afghans under threat, especially by those who helped Canada during its combat mission in Kandahar province. Today, the government announced a new program to resettle 20,000 people. But Evan Dyer shows us why critics say it's too little, too late.
The video from Kandahar is unverified, but consistent with reports from other places that have fallen to the Taliban, that insurgents are hunting people they see as collaborators and killing them. An aircraft arrived in Canada today carrying an unknown number of Afghan evacuees, but evacuations are becoming increasingly unsafe.
It seems like we're at the end game now. Embassies are closing, passport offices are closed, and now it's turning into a complete and utter downfall of the Afghan regime.
Mauro's former interpreter is Abdul. He's now safe in hotel quarantine in London. His parents and 4 siblings are displaced people on the run in Kabul. We've concealed his identity.
I don't care about myself right now. I'm okay. So I can't sleep. I'm really thinking in the whole night. I can't sleep it.
One brother who also worked for the Canadian Army is safe in Whitby, Ontario, but has similar nights.
I sleep at 2, 3 o'clock. I wake up in the morning and I see news. I keep track of news, and everything is like there's no good news.
Morrow says it will soon be every man for himself, and now is the time to start landing and loading more planes.
I'd be there in a minute if I could. This is something that touches, I think, a lot of us as veterans because we fought so hard in that part of the world for so long. To be able to close out the mission with some human beings, some Afghans showing up to Canada, starting a new life.
Today, the government announced a new program to bring 20,000 Afghan refugees to Canada. Advocates for the interpreters say the government needs to focus on the job it's already behind on. A statement from the group Not Left Behind said Canada had the opportunity to safely rescue interpreters and other locally employed staff that supported Canada. Today's response comes in the 11th hour. We're worried it's too little, too late. Veterans say Canada would help more by authorizing rescue missions and waiving some of its paperwork, because everyone in Kabul is now living on borrowed time. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Chelsea, Quebec.
The U.S. is entering a new phase in its COVID-19 rollout. The Food and Drug Administration is now authorizing booster shots, a third shot of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine for some vulnerable patients. And as Megan Fitzpatrick reports, it's grabbed the attention of people here in Canada.
The FDA has amended its authorization for the use of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines to allow for third doses to be given, but only to certain populations. Those include organ transplant recipients and people with certain medical conditions that compromise their immune systems. What conditions exactly, who is going to be eligible for a third dose, that's what's up for discussion today by an expert panel at the CDC. Now that the FDA has given a green light to giving these booster doses, this expert panel will provide clinical recommendations on how exactly that should happen. So there's still a few more steps to go before these third doses start going out to certain patients. Why the FDA made this decision? They say the U.S. is in another wave of COVID-19 and that people with compromised immune systems are particularly at risk for severe disease. They say after a review of available data, the FDA determined that this group may benefit from a third dose. The statement goes on to say today's action allows doctors to boost immunity in certain immunocompromised individuals who need extra protection from COVID-19. The FDA is following the example of some other countries. Israel started giving third doses to immunocompromised residents a few weeks ago, and France and Germany have announced plans to start doing so in September. As for Canada, a statement from Health Canada this morning says that NACI, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, is monitoring emerging evidence on the effectiveness of COVID vaccines in immunocompromised people, including evidence on the potential need or benefit of a third dose in this population. For now, NACI is still recommending 2 doses of an mRNA vaccine. That's a Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. The statement also says that NACI will update its recommendations in the coming weeks, so it's possible news could be coming on this front in Canada as well. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Washington.
The U.S. is entering a new phase of its COVID protocols, and here in Canada, our numbers have jumped significantly right in British Columbia. After the break, Dr. Srinivas Murthy is live with me to talk about that rise in cases and what he's watching for.
It's early morning at the Black Fire Camp near Invermere in southeastern British Columbia. A helicopter goes on patrol, looking for new fires. 2,000 feet below, smoke from yesterday's fires still hangs in the valleys. BC hasn't seen a fire season like this one in 25 years. The provincial government has thrown 5,000 men into the fight. It's borrowed equipment from almost every other province, and even Alaska. The price for this is staggering, up to $2 million per day. So far, the fire has destroyed enough forest and bushland to cover a strip 1 kilometer wide, stretching from Vancouver to the Ontario border. It's only July. The peak fire season is still to come in the month of August.
Our current fire season, it would be compared to some of the worst ones that we've seen in the province for this time of the year. From California to British Columbia, the whole country is in that same state. And their old timers are saying it's the worst they've ever seen in recorded memory.
BC forests have literally dried up this summer, and the storms have brought no rain, only more fire. In Victoria, a computer collects data from lightning detectors around the province. Tomorrow, many of these strikes will be fires burning out of control.
Yeah, that stuff coming in.
Next door, in the forestry's war room, overworked staff play a frustrating game of chasing too many fires with too few resources.
Basically, it's hot and dry with very low humidities, particularly through the central interior.
Hot, dry weather turns little fires into infernos. This fire started after a lightning strike, but it was small. It should have been out with a day's work. It was just smoldering when a helicopter crew went in for an initial attack.
I don't think we can't hover. We can just turn. That's the stuff right there.
Okay, what we've got here, this is where I put in Route Bravo. This is a stock fire. And there's an old recent burn over here. And then it's just across the drop.
Back in Invermere, forestry staff went over plans for mopping it up. But even as they spoke, their plans were becoming obsolete. The fire was exploding out of control, and the crew was forced to retreat.
They just take off and we get there. By the time we get there, they go from a spot fire just to 20 acres in a matter of 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So we just can't get any decent control on them in this short period of time. They're just gone by the time we get there.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
The effects can be quite severe.
The smoke flowing into the south coast and the Fraser Valley from BC's wildfires could provide some relief from soaring temperatures, but the combination remains dangerous, particularly for the most vulnerable. More than a dozen temperature records have also fallen across southern and central BC. All of this not good news for wildfires. Even the smoke is hampering efforts.
It's going to be messy. I think there's going to be a lot of terminations.
All federal employees will be required to be fully vaccinated. That includes workers in federally regulated industries like rail and airlines. Locally, there's a push for businesses to bring in their own rules. Some are, but others say it's tricky without a mandate from the province. And BC has recorded the highest daily total of COVID-19 cases since May, 717 new since yesterday. 50% of those are in interior health. Joining me live now is infectious disease expert Dr. Srinivas Murthy. Thanks for being here tonight.
Hello again, Anita.
Dr. Murthy, what do you make of these high numbers? I have to say, I heard a lot of, whoa, what's going on here today? So what do you make of them?
Yeah, they're high, and they're predictably high based on where things have been over these past couple of weeks, where we've seen this slow and then rapidly escalating rise, which speaks to what this Delta variant is doing in other places around the world.
Now, you've helped advise governments on COVID policy. How does what we're seeing now compare with the kind of uptick you might reasonably expect as restrictions have loosened here?
So a part of it is that we've loosened restrictions, but I think the main thing driving this rise is this new variant, when the transmissibility is much higher than what it was last year. And so it's a concern for not just British Columbia, but Canada and the entire world, to be frank.
Okay, and a lot of these cases are coming from interior health. There are special rules for the central Okanagan now. I'm also hearing a lot of people say that, other parts of the province are next. So given what you're saying about the Delta variant and that this is really driving this, do you think that stricter rules are coming for all of us? And if not, or if so, what do you think that they should?
Yeah, it's tough to predict what will happen. And I think the main thing right now is to get as much immunity into our population as possible with vaccinations. And in the absence of getting there into high rates with 2 vaccines, we'll probably have to do some sort of public health precautions to keep the numbers low.
But we really are seeing a plateau when it comes to vaccines. And I know there's such a big push right now. You know, there's a lot of health officials out there all the time, boots on the ground, saying we need to get as many people vaccinated as we can. What more can be done that isn't being done?
Yeah, this is that last mile that's always the hardest group to reach for any vaccination campaign anywhere. It's the people who are hesitant, but also the people who don't have access to the care that others do. And so they may not know where the local mobile pop-up is, or aren't on Twitter to follow things. And I think we really need to do a great job of continuing to reach out to those marginalized communities to get them vaccinated.
You know, we're not getting a lot of data in terms of how many of these cases are coming from unvaccinated or under-vaccinated people. What do you know from your research, you know, here, but also what's happening around the world?
Yeah, looking elsewhere where there's more data to use as to what's happening with Delta variant, the bulk of the cases that are requiring hospitalizations or ICU level care are in the unvaccinated or under-vaccinated, namely those with 1 dose or just immediately after their 2nd dose. And so the role of vaccination is still, even with this Delta variant, so important in keeping this disease down. What we also know from other places is that no one's really gotten a hold of this yet, even though people have high rates of vaccinations. And so 70, 80% may not be enough to get our cases down without added precautions like masks and public health precautions like people are implementing right now.
A lot of memes going around on social media right now showing what life is like now and what the Delta variant is going to do to life again in the fall. What do you see as happening in the fall?
Like, to be truthful, it's likely some restrictions are forthcoming. I hope that Canada, being a well-vaccinated population, that our cases will increase and then go down, but our hospitalizations and deaths will increase, but only marginally. So as we have a lot of immunity in our population, we'll have to see as the next few weeks roll out. I would proceed with excessive caution going forward because we don't actually know what's going to happen.
Dr. Srinivas Murthy, always a pleasure having you on our show. Thanks so much.
Take care, Anita.
British Columbians have turned to nature during the pandemic like never before. Coming up, we'll introduce you to the next episode of CBC's podcast, Beaches and Mountains. It's hosted by our own Johanna Wagstaffe. And at 6:41, you are looking at a live shot of Departure Bay Beach in Nanaimo. A lot of smoke out there. We'll talk to Johanna after the break about how long it's going to stick around for and what it means when it goes away.
At first glance, this looks like most backyards, but tucked in the corner is this 15-foot, 2-story structure. It all started last summer when the family, parents with 4 boys, had to tackle working from home.
And it started off as a kind of a small project. We just used extra wood that we had around and a fun way to keep them occupied. And then we realized that, this is going to go on longer than we thought, and we need to adjust and find ways to work and live within our space altogether. So we decided, let's make this a bigger project and build something a little bit bigger that we could all use for a whole bunch of different purposes.
Inside is an office space with heat, electricity, even Wi-Fi. It's a living room, a playroom, a sanctuary. And it took a lot of work. Cedric and Penny's dad, a retired electrician, designed and built this over the past year.
It was a bit unexpected, and we almost feel we went over the top. We lost control, but it's been very useful for both the parents and the kids and the friends. So I think it's a good addition to the little piece of land we have.
Mom and Dad may use it the most, but it's still a typical treehouse. Cars, trucks, teddy bears, a table and chairs takes over the whole top floor.
The upstairs.
Why?
Well, first of all, our parents work in the downstairs, so it's no fun being down there. We can barely ever go down there. And up here, we can go up here whenever. And there's more toys.
And even a few sleepovers with some envious friends. But for Mom, the best part is the connection to nature. Sure, there's still those Zoom calls, but there are squirrels in the background.
To be able to just work in a treehouse where, you've got the brook that's just that little babbling brook on the side, and you look out the windows and you're just immersed kind of in nature, and it's just, I think that's helped a lot of people in different ways, but for us, I think it's been really, a really cool experience.
Soon, in the fall, Penny and Cedric will return to their offices, and the boys will go back to the classroom. But the treehouse will continue to grow with their family.
And we know there'll be many stages, Soon our kids will be teenagers, sometimes you need your own space. And I think that's a great thing about it, it's just it's good for everybody.
For now, it's definitely this family's favorite spot to be. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Norris Point.
Over the past year and a half of the pandemic, people living in BC have turned to nature like never before. Recently, more cross-country and now cross-border travelers are arriving to enjoy our backyard, and who wouldn't? It's absolutely beautiful. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here live with us again. Now, Joe, you've been exploring the historical origins of our landscape through your new podcast, Beaches and Mountains. How can settlers get more out of the experience by connecting with our Indigenous history here?
Yeah, Anita, this is the focus of our first episode. My co-host Rohith Joseph and I really wanted to understand why British Columbians are so drawn to and so connected to the beaches and mountains that make up our province. For Indigenous people, that connection is so much deeper when it comes to, and it holds so much more significance when it comes to the places that settlers choose to play. So I want to start with Cole Osselton, who talks about the cultural significance of a swim in the Salish Sea for his Snuneymuxw people. Take a listen.
You go to the water and you ask it to help cleanse you, and you cleanse yourself, you wash yourself, not just your body, but like your spirit and your mind and your psyche.
Understanding of the nature that you so kind of crave, when you understand it from the perspective of the people that have lived there for tens of thousands of years, you're going to have a greater appreciation for it.
And that was Kagan Kwahagan, who talks about the beach that he lives on, where his ancestors have been for thousands and thousands of years. And the Haida oral history that I learned, and the oral history from Indigenous communities right across the province, talk about the earthquakes and the Ice Age, these sort of supernatural beings that helped guide people through these same phenomenon that shape the very beaches and mountains that we enjoy today. So as a scientist, I found that interesting. And as somebody, as a settler who enjoys our backyard, I'm taking a lot away from that, Anita.
Well, and we can't talk about our beaches and our landscapes without talking about climate change. And we're seeing it right now with the air quality from the wildfire smoke and the wildfires themselves.
Yeah, Anita, we've taken so much from nature over the course of the pandemic. The mental benefits are immeasurable. And I think now more than ever, it's obvious that human-caused climate change is changing the very landscape. Take a listen to environmental consultant Alan Shapiro about the changes that we're already seeing dampen our outdoor recreation.
But also the trail that I hiked 2 weeks ago probably won't be hikeable for the rest of the season because of flooding secondary to the heat wave. And so it really gives us this tangible, relatable, concrete experience of how climate change is affecting BC today.
I think now more than ever, with, as Anita mentioned, the wildfires, the heat waves, the IPCC report out earlier this week, climate change is on the front and front of everyone's minds across British Columbia. And I am pleased that we have 2 more episodes coming out, and the focus on solutions will be a big part of that. But let me take you to the current watches and warnings. That is a segue if I've ever seen one. This is surpassing many of our climate models. We're talking the 3rd heat wave for Metro Vancouver so far this summer, and we are approaching temperatures that we saw in late June. We spoke earlier of the excessive heat and smoke. That is likely to stick around for 1 more day. Perhaps a slight ease in the air quality for the south coast. This is what we're watching, that cold front tracking down to the south coast for Sunday. So tomorrow we really don't see any shift in the winds. It's Sunday that we'll get hopefully some showers by the back end of the day into Monday. Look at those cooler temperatures, and that will be, of course, a big story for the interior as well. So, Anita, 1 more hot and smoky day before we get a bit of a break. And I should mention the overnights also just as oppressive, but the other side of the cold front around the corner.
All right, Joe, thank you.
You're welcome.
And hot and dry weather has taken a huge toll on the prairies as well. Experts say the current drought is likely to be the worst in Canadian history. As Bonnie Allen shows us, the conditions have not only impacted farmers' livelihoods, but they're threatening global food security too.
This should probably be some of our weakest stuff.
Derek Talon's lentil crop didn't stand a chance this year. It had very little rain, then was blasted by the heat, the wind, and then grasshoppers too.
Yeah, so there's only a handful of lentils here. The grasshoppers have shelled out a lot of what was here. Production is down to almost nothing.
With harvest underway, it's the worst yield he's ever had.
This year, I'd say our farm will be around 20 to 25% of normal production, so down, like say 75-80% production.
A financial hit for prairie farmers, but also less food for the world.
They called it the Hungry 30s.
Compared to the 1930s, today's drought in Canada is shaping up to be more severe and more widespread.
And for food security, we have to look at this globally as well. There are severe droughts in the Mediterranean region, in Kazakhstan, in Russia, of course in the western U.S.
These days, farming innovations help growers squeeze out more crop with less moisture, but with limits.
We've got a crop failure on our hands right now.
After 50 years of farming, Barry Reisner says he's prepared for it.
We have had a number of good crops in the last 10 years or so. It shouldn't be a surprise that they can't all be good.
But he worries about farmers who may also be facing financial penalties. Some have signed contracts with grain companies months ago to guarantee shipments and price.
Farmers that have signed those contracts don't have the grain to deliver, and they have a commitment that they can't meet.
As for Talon, he's both a realist and an optimist. The low production of cereal grains and oilseeds is driving up prices to record levels on the world market.
That's our hope right now, is that we grow a crop next year and we can capitalize on the price increases that we've seen.
He's resilient, even when his crops aren't. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan.
A town in southern Spain is seeking UNESCO World Heritage status to preserve a sacred custom, socializing outdoors on hot summer nights. For years, residents have gathered outside their homes to play cards or shoot the breeze at sunset. Not many teenagers join in these days, but the mayor hopes that will change as support for the UNESCO application grows. Residents believe their tradition is at risk because of the growing popularity of social media and the countless hours many people spend on it. Well, betting on a single major sporting event will soon be allowed in Canada. We'll have more on provincial rules when it comes to betting next.
Nearly 700 kilometers north of Yellowknife, Britt Weaver is working hard to feed her family in Norman Wells.
We get a lot of wild game here, and moose sausage is so good when you mix it with pork fat. That's how it started.
That might be how it started, but here is where she is now. Not only is Weaver raising pigs, most of which she'll sell, she also has about 200 chickens, 20 turkeys, and some rabbits, all of which will end up on her family's dinner table, along with the vegetables and potatoes she grows in her greenhouses and gardens.
We don't buy any meat at all, so we'll usually go through 2 pigs and half a moose in 1 year.
Some might think she works as hard to keep her costs down, but Weaver says raising your own meat this far north is expensive and complicated. Animals can only be shipped up by plane or on the winter road, and feeding them adds up. She says it costs about $600 to feed each pig. This year there was some help. She got a grant from the territorial government to ship up food for the animals.
That made it possible for other people to buy feed for chickens and stuff like that.
One of those people is Doris Howard.
That one's empty, isn't it? Okay, so you have to give me that one.
She bought some broiler chickens from Weaver, and she and her daughters are spending their summer getting them ready for a fall harvest.
First, they were so excited, but they just can't comprehend that we're actually going to harvest these little birds.
Howard says for her, she started out thinking this would be a cheaper option, but now she's just happy she'll have quality food for her family.
I know what kind of meat it's going to be. It's a good experience for the girls to find out where their food comes from, and it's going to be healthier meat than what we just get at the store.
Howard says she would do it again, but maybe with a neighbor or friend to share the work and the cost. For Britt Weaver, that's music to her ears.
I love that. That's my favorite thing.
Weaver says farms like hers could help with food insecurity in the north if costs came down, but that would involve a larger farm operation and the ability to buy feed at lower prices. She says right now she can't produce food any more cheaply than what people can buy at the store, but says there is a market for quality products that might cost a little bit more. Shannon Scott, CBC News, Norman Wells, Northwest Territories.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
New episodes of Pieces are now available. Host Jeremy Ratt goes on a journey of self-discovery as he explores his Indigenous roots. Learn more at cbc.ca/pieces and never miss an episode of your favorite CBC drama or comedy again with the free CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca.
Well, soon it'll be legal in Canada to bet on a single major sporting event like the Super Bowl and the Stanley Cup. Under a new law, provinces will be allowed to open up individual game betting. And as Mukta Gabrisalesa explains, the move could allow them to tap into a billion-dollar market.
When it comes to betting on sporting events, the Canadian government is ready to go all in.
Provinces and territories will be able to offer single event sport betting products like wagering on the Grey Cup, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, or the Super Bowl.
The new law will go into play August 27th. In most provinces, gamblers are required to place bets on at least 3 games at a time. It's called parlay betting, and it's to prevent match fixing. But Canadians are still betting on single games, spending about $14 billion a year through illegal and offshore operations.
We have a lot of sports books that have been accessing the Canadian market for well over a decade. So they're coming in, they're offering sports betting, and they're paying no tax. So the provinces don't collect any revenue.
People could also just cross the border to play, and casinos here want in on the action.
We do plan to have a significant investment at both of our properties, and we think that this is just going to be a wonderful amenity to add to our resort experience here that's been missing for a number of years.
Experts say keeping sports free of match fixing is still a priority. Today's technology just makes it easier to catch. Magda Gebre-Selassie, CBC News, Toronto.
There's just something about the sentimentality of sport. Last night, the Yankees and the White Sox played a game in a stadium cut out of an Iowa cornfield, all in tribute to the classic 80s baseball movie, Field of Dreams. So cool. About 8,000 fans took in the game after it was delayed by the pandemic. Players wore throwback uniforms just as those in the movie did. The White Sox won in spectacular fashion with a walk-off home run. The league says the historic game will be played again next season. That is it for our show tonight, and I'm away next week. Dan Burrett will be filling in. He's also here at 11 o'clock tonight after the National. Have a wonderful evening.